Thank you, thank you. So I'd like to start by talking about the concept of freedom. I think the term freedom, the concept of freedom, is something that is very important to us. We're very passionate in our search for freedom and in our defense of our rights of freedom. And we've fought very hard for many centuries to achieve a certain level of freedom, which in many ways has been achieved, in many ways hasn't. But what I'm interested in addressing is the fact that even though we may have a certain degree of external freedom in terms of how we live our lives, in terms of how we dress, what we believe in, what we do with our time, there's a deeper aspect of freedom that I think is more important, which is deep down in our minds. How free are we? So if we look at our mind and we see how often it does things we don't want it to do. Often our mind goes to places we don't want it to go. Thoughts, emotions, memories, worries. So the mind is not behaving in a way we want it to behave. And also the opposite. Very often our mind sort of does things or goes to places we don't want it to go to. Worries, obsessive planning, painful memories, reactions. When we're sitting in a car stuck in traffic, and then we find ourselves reacting negatively, feeling impatient, feeling upset. This is kind of beyond our intellect, isn't it? We don't plan that reaction. Or when somebody says something to us that we don't like, and we feel hurt, we feel upset, we don't plan the reaction. So, in many ways, we are not in control of our minds. And of course, you discover this really strongly when you try to meditate. Anybody who meditates discovers within 5 minutes or 5 seconds the lack of control. You know, we're trying to sit there and focus on our breathing, for example, and within seconds, the mind is planning menus or writing emails or plotting revenge. I don't know. The mind is going to places constantly. So there's this lack of freedom, this lack of choice. And then when it comes to happiness, the same thing seems to be the case. That we don't know how to choose happiness. It's almost as if we have to hope that happiness will choose us. You know what I mean? So, and also our quest for happiness is very much based on external things. Very often we think happiness will come from, and then there's a whole list. People, places, situations. Happiness comes from those things. And so then we are left hoping that we can manipulate our life to a certain degree so that the happiness will arise. But of course, it's beyond our control. And also, I think for many people, the definition of happiness is very much based on a sensation, a kind of quick sensation, almost like a buzz. You know, we have this kind of, we want to get high, we want to feel something. Our idea of happiness is a sensation that is triggered by something, and then we feel good. And of course, the problem with that is it doesn't last. So we feel good, then we feel bad. It's very unstable. So when our happiness depends on an external trigger, then the problem is when the trigger is absent, the happiness is absent. And we're just, in a way, lurching from one high to the next, looking for a buzz, looking for a sensation. And so much of the way we construct our lives now is based on that, with our use of the internet, even food, caffeine, different experiences. We construct our life to give us these sensations that make us feel good. But the problem is, the more we are hoping that happiness will come to us from the outside, the more we feel lacking inside. In a way, we're telling ourselves that we're deficient. I need this, I need that, then I will be happy. So we're creating a feeling of lack, that we lack that happiness. We're creating a deficiency or a sense of almost despair. And this becomes very painful. And then also the wanting and the grasping and craving that we experience becomes a habit that creates more wanting, grasping, and craving. So the wanting leads to more wanting. And then we feel never satisfied because whatever we get isn't enough, because we're perpetuating the habit of wanting. So then we're jumping over the experience looking for the next thing. So we feel this kind of unsettled quality in our lives, almost like a fear or a feeling of uncertainty. And this feeds us to want more. So it's a very vicious cycle. And then all the things that we depend upon for our happiness are, of course, impermanent. They're subject to change. So there's a feeling of uncertainty because we're depending on the unreliable. We kind of know that. We kind of know that everything we depend upon for our happiness is unreliable because of its changeable nature. So we have two problems here. We have the problem of endless wanting and the problem of depending on the unreliable. So this kind of happiness hasn't worked for us. It hasn't given us peace. It's just made us more exhausted, more frustrated. And I think through meditation training, we can find a very different approach. Basically, we're looking for something different, happiness from the inside. We're recognizing that happiness and suffering are states of mind. So, of course, they are triggered by all kinds of situations, but ultimately they are mind states. So if we're looking at our states of mind, and then looking at the possibility to transform those states of mind, then that becomes very fruitful. And then, of course, the problem starts up again, because we start meditating, looking for happiness. So we're busy meditating, and then again, trying to get something, trying to feel something. And this is the struggle for many people in meditation, is they say, it's not working because I don't feel anything. You know, I've been at this for this long, and when am I going to get high? Where's the buzz? So we want the feeling, because we're very conditioned to feel something. We're in this culture of looking for a high, and then we meditate and look for the same thing. The cycle starts again, of wanting, not getting, feeling it's not enough. So I think maybe we could redefine our notion of happiness here. And instead of looking for some kind of feeling or sensation, which is very temporary, it comes and it goes, instead of that, maybe we could discover a kind of peace within ourselves where everything's okay. Whether things are going well or not going well, everything can be okay. Because true happiness is a state of freedom, where our mind can feel calm and positive. Now, when I say calm, I'm not talking about some kind of tranquilized state. Often when people hear about meditation and mindfulness, they think, okay, this is about calming the mind, so I'm going to really bring my stress down, I'm really going to calm down. And then what happens to people is they think meditation means you're supposed to get rid of all of your thoughts. So they have this idea that the calm state is an empty state, a blank state. Calming the mind means kind of stilling everything, stilling the mind. And that again becomes a problem because we're struggling to blank out our thoughts and emotions. And we think of meditation a bit like going to sleep or going into a coma, just going under. It's not about going to sleep, it's about waking up. It's about being present, being conscious, being aware. So then the thoughts and feelings and distractions are actually part of the whole journey. It's all about how you deal with those. It's not about calming them down so there's nothing happening. It's about being the observer, taking the place of the observer, the one who is aware of the mind. And the observer is happy. The observer is free. Let's think about it this way. When you're experiencing unhappiness, when you're experiencing sadness, there's a part of you that knows you're unhappy. And when you meditate, you become more identified with that part that knows what the mind is doing. And that part is not in the unhappiness. That part is able to see it. So that awareness is free. And the more we can build our awareness, the more freedom we can develop. So I think it's important to stop seeing meditation and mindfulness as a way of just getting rid of or removing everything, but instead a way of becoming the observer of the mind. And this is how we choose happiness. Because when we can be the observer, we can start to make choices. Let's look at what happens to somebody in a meditation session. They are observing their breathing. That's a very common technique, focusing on your breathing. And then, of course, within a few seconds, the mind starts wandering. And then the person starts punishing themselves and saying, I'm a failure, I can't do this. That's not right. So instead of feeling like a failure because our mind wandered, the other option would be to simply notice that the mind wandered and then return to the breath. Gently and compassionately returning to the breath. This is actually the meaning of compassion, is that you're not beating yourself up for what your mind is doing, and also you're not trying to chase those thoughts and make them different. You're just letting them be how they are. That's unconditional love. You have a thought or a feeling, it's okay the way it is. You don't need to get rid of it, you don't need more of it. It's just fine. That's compassion. It's fine the way it is. And then you return to the breath, and you carry on, and then the mind goes again. The mind escapes again, the mind floats off into thoughts, and you bring it back. And this bringing it back again and again, that's how we're exercising choice. Because it was kind of choiceless that our mind got distracted, and now we're turning round and bringing it back to the breath. We're making that choice. I'm coming back here. So through meditation training, we're strengthening that power of choice. And then as we meditate every day, regularly, just like going to the gym, lifting weights, exercise, we're exercising our mind, and this is making us stronger. So then we can find that in our life, we can become more able to choose to stay positive. Instead of being automatically dragged into negative reactivity, which is our normal habit, we can choose to stay calm and stay present, stay focused, stay positive. And what we're doing is we're choosing a happiness that is beyond triggers and supports and need. It's simply an internal state of being. So when we hear this term inner peace, it sounds very weak, doesn't it? Inner peace, like nothing's happening. But I think it means to be at peace with your experiences. Negative ones as well as positive ones. So say you're sitting in a car. A favorite practice of mine is to practice mindful moments when I'm stuck in traffic or when I'm standing in a queue at an airport. So these are situations that normally make us feel wound up, irritated, impatient, etc. So you're choosing instead to just be aware of your body and your breathing. You're sitting in that car, you're stuck in traffic, your mind is running into the impatience or anger, and you just pull it back and go into a sense of presence, feeling the ground under your feet, feeling the chair under your body, being aware of your shoulders, your breathing. You're in that mindful state. What you've done in that moment is you've reprogrammed yourself. Because we normally have this automatic programming of when I'm in a stressful situation, such as waiting for something, I must react negatively. It's not even intellectualized. It's very much part of our habit, our habitual way of reacting. So instead, we're changing that and learning to just be still and be calm and be in this moment without judging this moment. So we're reprogramming ourselves. We're, in a way, rewiring ourselves. Instead of having this stressful situation and negative reaction kind of fused together, we have a stressful situation and a relaxed response. And we're creating a new connection. In terms of our brain, we're building new neural pathways. And these become stronger and stronger and stronger. And also we're learning happiness. Because next time you're stuck in traffic, you can think, oh great, now I can do that thing that I learned from that monk. So you feel joy. You think, great, bring it on, traffic, come on, let's do more. It's like going to the gym and loading more weights on the weightlifting machine. You get bigger muscles. So life's struggles and difficulties become chances or opportunities for awakening. So then you're almost looking forward to that. I don't mean you're becoming some kind of masochist who just wants everything to go wrong. I just mean that you're taking experiences as they come, and when you're stuck in traffic, you feel okay, you feel in a way good, you want this to happen because it gives you a chance for training. And then that shifts into your relationships. Because let's face it, relationships are the main provokers of stress in our life. How people behave, how we behave, all of that stuff. So that becomes your traffic experience. You're with somebody who you feel uncomfortable, and that's your traffic training. Because you're learning to meet the obstacle with a relaxed mind, which doesn't mean you become passive or like a doormat and letting people abuse you. It doesn't mean that. It simply means you don't get wound up. And it means you can actually, in a way, experience compassion towards that person. Because in the same way as when you were stuck in traffic and you felt somehow good about the traffic because this is your chance for training, you now feel that this person is your friend. They're presenting you with an opportunity for training. So your heart opens to them. And that's compassion. You see, for many people, compassion is very partial. It's just an emotional experience that is triggered when you see small, fluffy animals and children, or the vulnerable. And of course, that's a very crucial area of compassion. We see people who are vulnerable, we feel compassion, but that's very partial, just in that moment, at that time, and it's just an experience of an emotional reaction that comes and goes. Whereas what I'm talking about here through meditation training is where you're building the networks of compassion in your behavior, in your brain, in your behavior. You're building those networks because every time somebody does something or says something that makes you uncomfortable, you don't have to take it, you don't have to be a victim, but how you feel internally is the crucial thing, isn't it? And if you can see this person as your compassion tester, your opportunity, then your energy changes and the relationship changes. So you're choosing happiness even in difficult situations. Because I think if happiness is only in certain situations when things are going well, then it's very partial. But if you're choosing to be happy even against the odds, then you're really in charge of your life. But of course, we have to train in this. This is work. This is work. We need to train. We need to put effort into daily meditation. And I think many people find that difficult because they're so busy and meditation's the last thing on the list and then we're too tired, and all of those things. But I think actually the main reason people struggle to meditate every day is because of grasping. It's because of a sense of hidden grasping, a hidden agenda, which is, I want the meditation to make me feel good. You know, that hidden agenda. It's got to feel nice, and if it doesn't feel nice, it's not worth doing. And then, of course, that doesn't happen, so then we don't want to meditate. We want to do other stuff. want to drink 5 coffees in a row because that makes us feel better or whatever. We want things, we want people, we want situations. That's feeding us very instantly. The meditation doesn't give us an instant hit. So it becomes much harder to stay committed to something that's not giving you a hit. Really hard. So I think the solution is to do 2 things. One is to learn how to practice tiny moments of meditation throughout the day. I'm not saying that will give you a hit, but I'm just saying it's easy to just drop into a mindful state while you're washing your hands or brushing your teeth or stuck in traffic, because it's just a moment. You're not requiring time. You're just momentarily going into that state throughout the day. And what happens to you is you start to notice that this is quite pleasurable. You're not looking for pleasure. You're not looking for a feeling. But as the mindfulness builds up throughout your day, you start to feel good, because you start to feel at peace and you start to feel nourished. It brings an enormous amount of nourishment into your being, because you're being present, you're being calm, you're not going with negative reactivity. And this is really enriching. And this gets you wanting to meditate more. So that's one thing. Another thing, which really helps if you find it hard to meditate regularly, is to occasionally develop some kind of wisdom about the process of meditation, which means to spend time thinking about why meditation is important. And the best way to do this is to actually ask yourself simple questions, such as, where does happiness really come from? Where does happiness really come from? And where does suffering really come from? They come from the mind. They are mind states. And what happens if I change my mind state? What happens if I train my mind? How does this address the deep question of happiness and suffering? So if you ask yourself that, it helps you to remember that actually in life, all we want is happiness and freedom from pain. And all the things we're doing to get that are only working to a certain degree. But if happiness and freedom from pain are mind states, then surely training our mind is the way to get what we want. So when you realize that meditation will actually give you what you wanted from all those other things but weren't getting in the long run, when you realize it's a long journey but it will give you what you wanted, then you want to meditate. This gives you energy for practice. So I think I've covered a few points here. I've been talking about happiness and the choice, choosing happiness, learning where happiness comes from, and the link with meditation practice. And I think a really crucial thing to take away from this is that meditation requires letting go rather than grasping. We tend to live in such a grasping culture. We're always wanting something. And then when we meditate, it's really hard not to grasp after results. But I think it's really important just to have some time when we totally let go and just experience our mind, whether it's busy or not busy. There's no such thing as good meditation or bad meditation. You know, some people have a session where their mind is just crazy, just rolling around like a spinning top, and they feel it was a bad session. To me, that's a good session, because you saw your mind in all its glory. You're experiencing the busy mind. That's a good session. That's work. That's a good workout. So maybe we need to move away from this judgment around what a good session and a bad session is. And I think then we can experience more freedom and greater compassion. So I want to stop there and now open this up to questions and discussion. So Rami's going to lead that.
I guess I've known you a little more than a year now, and every time, I think last year, every around 6 weeks, Thubten was coming to Google and giving such talks. And I still kind of find myself learning new things when you speak about the same subjects.
Me too. Every time I speak, I learn something.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a lot of questions, but there's a lot of people in the room. So I want to make sure I give time to well, not everyone, but a lot of people to ask questions. But I'll just start with a few questions and then open it up to the floor. And I want to start kind of with a bit more, I guess, personal about your choice when you decided to leave acting and become a monk. Like, at what period of your life and how did you come to that decision? In case there's someone in the room looking to make the switch.
Oh yeah, okay. So I was 21, which is 25 years ago, and I was living in New York, and I was incredibly stressed. I mean, I really was burning out with stress, and I needed something to really get my emotional and physical health back on track. And a friend of mine told me about a Buddhist monastery called Samyeling in Scotland. It's the oldest Tibetan Buddhist monastery in the West. It was started in the 1960s. And she told me about this place and said, you could go there and be a monk for a year to kind of like sort yourself out, you know? And I went there and I became a monk after 3 days. And it was only for a year, first of all. I wasn't planning to stay longer, but slowly over time, during that year, I started to study Buddhist philosophy and meditation. And also through studying these teachings, my attitude about life started to change. I started to think, what do I want in my life? Do I want to live a life maybe more that's down the avenue of service, serving others? And I started to see how being a monk could help me to not only help myself, but help others. And so I decided to stay, and I eventually became a fully ordained life monk. But the initial motive, I think, was just feeling really crazy and needing some peace. And then it changed into a sense of a journey and a path which I'm learning and trying to help others to learn.
Cool. And in the beginning of the journey, I suppose, and a lot of people that start meditating, you probably face some challenges and some difficulties.
Yeah.
I know you've probably meditated way a lot more than a lot of people in the room. So I guess just to relate to your experience, kind of your challenges when you first started to meditate and a lot of the difficulties you faced, like what are some of them that you can share?
Well, the first time I meditated, it was really in at the deep end. We had to do 2 hours without moving. And I just remember sitting there with my legs on fire. We had to sit cross-legged on the floor, my legs and my back on fire. And there was a carpet in front of me with patterns, and I was looking at these patterns to just try and stay alive, you know, just focus on that pattern and you won't go crazy. So that was extreme. And then, of course, I learned how to build it up slowly and do smaller sessions. But one of the challenges I found earlier on, which I addressed in this talk, is that I really was searching for a feeling all the time. And there was a period where I was doing a lot of meditation and getting very depressed and feeling very, almost like let down. There was a kind of heavy feeling. And I spoke to my teacher, Akon Rinpoche, and I told him about this, and he said, actually, you're like somebody who's taking drugs. You're using the meditation like a drug. You're trying to get high. And I realized that's what I was doing. I was sitting down to try and ramp up some sensation in my mind or my body. And of course, because you're looking for something, you're feeling the lack of that. And so he showed me how to work through that. And instead, you know, there really has to be a motivation of compassion. Even if you're just meditating for stress reduction, that's not enough. There's got to be a feeling that this is not just about me, but about others. And you're dedicating your practice to the happiness of all, the happiness of others. And then this removes the grasping, not all of it, but some of it, and also gives a sense of a journey.
And at this stage for you, do you still find it hard to let go of the grasping and always have the right intention, or do you still struggle somehow?
Of course I still struggle. And it's, you know, this whole idea of having the right intention, that, you know, in Buddhism we talk about having the motivation to free all beings from suffering, and this needs to be your motivation for practice. So I could really give myself a hard time about that and say, well, that's not genuine, I'm not experiencing that much, and my motivation's not good enough. But I actually think wanting to have good motivation is good motivation. Almost like wanting to be more compassionate means you already are compassionate. And that's the way I relax in myself about this stuff, where when I'm struggling with this stuff, I say, actually, I'm doing my best. So it's okay. I'm much gentler on myself than I used to be. That's changed a lot through meditation.
Yeah, I suppose it's a common challenge for a lot when you beat yourself with a stick when it wasn't a good meditation session.
It wasn't good enough, it wasn't authentic, it wasn't this, it wasn't that. That's just another judgment. That's another thing to let go of.
And kind of along those lines, so what's good, what's bad. So a lot of people sometimes, me included, when you're feeling good and okay and, whatever is around you is benefiting you to meditate, you sit and meditate. But when you're sick, when you're ill, when you don't feel good, you're like, no, I don't need meditation now. Or vice versa. Sometimes people who really only meditate when they're stressed and they're really happy, they're like, I don't need meditation because I'm already happy.
The first one is more common. Which is, both are true, and the first one's even more common, which is where if you're tired, you're sick, you're unhappy, you think, oh, I'll meditate later. I'm not in the right state for it to be a good session. And this is really a kind of deceptive motivation, because what happens then is you're telling yourself, I have to feel a certain way for my meditation to work. I can only meditate when I feel like it, when I feel good. And that's not meditation. Then it's again back to that grasping. So I think it's really important to meditate when you're tired, when you're sick, when you're unhappy, because you're just being with that experience in an unconditional way. And that is how you make friends with yourself, all aspects of yourself. Otherwise, you're just showing up at the meditation cushion when you're in a good mood. It's like you're having a very partial relationship with yourself, like a fair weather friend, When I'm in a good mood, then I'll sit with my mind. But when my mind is not in a good state, I'm going to reject it. Instead, if you meditate when you're unwell, you're making friends with your experience in a very genuine, compassionate way. Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions, or should I keep going?
So we were speaking about the experience of being stuck in the traffic. So I wonder if any of the techniques may be applied to the situation where you are actually driving. So I wonder whether being mindful may get in the way of doing some important work that requires being focused on something external.
Well, actually, just to drive a car, you are being mindful. Everyone has a natural kind of mindfulness. To drive a car, you have to be mindful, otherwise your car's going to crash. So there is already a level of mindfulness there. And I think it's important to see mindfulness as you're being really present, you're not switched off. Some people like to close their eyes and kind of go within. That's maybe not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being totally in this moment. So when you're driving a car, you have to be totally in this moment. But what many people do is they drive a car and they're kind of partially mindful of whatever's going on, and then they're listening to music and chatting to a friend, and there's very split attention. But you could drive completely mindfully, and that could be meditation. Yeah.
So I think I have two comments, and I was hoping you could reflect on that. So the first comment is, why isn't being more aware in a state of freedom the default? Like, why is it such a challenge for us? And then secondly, I was wondering, are we not actually choosing, not per se happiness, but to be more in control of the different states of being? So it's more of kind of like a control issue almost. Like if you have more awareness of all the states of being, then you feel in control. You're not as much into like either being happy or being like suffering. So so basically the two comments are: is it why it's not the default, and why is it's not more about building awareness to feel more in control?
Well, in a way, when you say happiness and freedom and default, in the Buddhist understanding, we believe that our natural mind is pure. Our deeper mind is free. We call it Buddha nature, which is that deep down inside we have the potential for awakening. And in fact, every time you sit down on a chair or a cushion to meditate, you are acknowledging that potential. Because why would you do something unless you felt you had the potential to achieve the results of it? So you're meditating because you know there's something deeper. So in a way, our natural state is happy and pure and free, but it's layered with confusion. We get caught up in confusion. We get addicted to confusion. And a lot of that's to do with survival. You know, the survival instinct, the fight or flight reaction. In a way, our brain is wired to kind of obsess about what's wrong and what's dangerous, because that's how we stay alive. But much deeper than that is pure consciousness that we can learn to slowly access through meditation. And then the second comment around, actually I've forgotten your second comment, it was really intense, so can you repeat it?
So, are we not choosing to be more aware? So
By-
you're
in
saying
meditation?
Yeah, like in meditation. So instead of it's not choosing happiness, but it's more like we're choosing to be more aware of our different states of beings. Thereby, we build up more control of where either we are in this happy mode or we are in this suffering mode. Yes or no, or like basically our capability to zoom out is built by doing meditation.
I don't know about control. I don't know if we're controlling our mind states. I think it's that we're learning to let go. So it's a bit like traffic on a road. You have cars going by. Are you getting into the cars and going for drives, or are you just letting the cars go by? And then maybe you could choose to get into the useful cars, the cars that take you somewhere positive. So it's about making choice. I find the term control makes me think of something very tight and rigid and repressive. I'm talking about freedom and choice. Does that make sense? Cool, thank you.
Do you think that you're more free if you control your own mind, or more free if the mind controls you?
Well, let's dump this word control. I think you can be more free if you can choose what your mind is doing. Do you understand why I'm slightly hesitant about the term control? Because it sounds like you're really making your mind very tense, controlling what it does, kind of pushing down the negative thoughts and jumping into the positive thoughts. That to me feels very stressful, yeah? So can we rephrase this and think more in terms of freedom? And your question was, you know, are you choosing or is the mind choosing you? And it really, like I started my talk today, it really feels like stuff chooses us. Like suddenly we're experiencing sadness and we're thinking, well, I didn't ask for this, where did this come from? And then we think somebody put it in us, you know, we immediately point the finger. So, oh, it must be you. Why am I feeling like this? It must be you, or it must be this. And so it feels like these mind states are invading or choosing us and sticking to us like glue. And I think meditation is about changing it round so that you are the one who is creating. You are creating your thoughts and emotions, and you're learning how to create the right ones and just let go of the ones that harm you. Thank you. Yeah.
So I actually also had two questions. For one, it's mindfulness. I mean, we want to be present in this moment, but I guess a lot of people here have this, that we plan ahead, we plan our next day, we plan our next week, our year. So how would you suggest do we do this?
Yeah.
Like, how do we plan, but we still stay mindful?
Sure. So, yeah, we do need to plan. And it often sounds like a contradiction when we say mindfulness is about being in the present moment, and then, well, we've got to plan stuff. Are we supposed to just live in the present all the time? If you lived in the present all the time, you wouldn't eat. I mean, you wouldn't plan your, you know what I mean? You're planning your meal. So again, it's to do with choice. I think we plan obsessively. We plan impulsively. We plan in a way that becomes so habitual that we never actually arrive, because when we get to the thing we planned, we're busy planning the next thing. So how about planning with choice? How about choosing to plan as and when you need to plan, and then let go? Make plans, do what you need to do, but let go of outcomes. That would be a much healthier way of making our plans actually succeed. What was your second question?
So with this, you really say that we just let go of the outcome, like we don't judge it anymore, we just
I think
plan?
that's important. Even in worldly success, if you want to be successful at work, you've got to make a plan, you've got to do what it takes to get there and let go of outcomes, because otherwise you're so actually fearful that the outcome won't happen that it won't happen because you've created a sense of lack already in your mind.
Okay. Yeah, the second one was more about emotions.
Yeah.
So we kind of have this thought that we actually need to let out our emotions. So if I feel sad, I don't know, I need to cry to let it out. So would you really say we need to do this? Because this kind of state of like being aware of the feeling, I feel like we make like pressure. Suppress it, exactly.
Yeah, so when we feel we need to let out our emotion, it's because we see our emotion as something very solid and we need to somehow eject it. You know what I mean? We have to get it out because otherwise it's going to poison us. It's so solid and we have to, almost like vomiting. You know what I mean? And so with meditation, you start to understand the mind in a very different way, which is that your emotions aren't real. Your emotions aren't real. They can come and go like clouds in the sky or waves in the ocean. So you don't need to suppress them. You don't need to get them out. You can just experience them and let them go. So this is the training of meditation, which will help us to understand our mind or experience our mind more in that way. And then this whole notion of suppression or expression starts to change. You find that you can just be with the emotion and not be too bothered by it.
I have one and a connected question, so two maybe. So I do meditate and I'm far away from, doing it in the ideal way, or it's a journey. I understood it's a journey, but I try to think of ways to bring this to other people, to encourage other people, or to, hold my own meditation session maybe one day. Would you have any advice what to do or maybe what not to do in order to really encourage people? And maybe connected to that, how would you, it's maybe a difficult question to ask a monk, but I think many people connect meditation to spirituality or religion, and they might be disconnected from religion and spirituality on an intellectual level. So this might, although it is so accessible, you just need to sit down, it might be difficult for people to get over that barrier. Maybe you have any advice on how to encourage that more?
Okay, so the first question around teaching others. Of course, it's really important to let one's own practice mature before one teaches others, mature to a certain degree at least, and also to have good instruction and guidance from teachers so that you really are transmitting it in the correct way. I think that's really, really important. There are obviously different levels of teacher. I'm just an ordinary instructor. I'm not an enlightened person who can give blessings and all that kind of stuff. I'm just an ordinary instructor. But even for that, I've had to do a certain amount of retreats and training and be taught properly and transmit according to kind of correct procedure. So it's important to get more training for yourself before maybe passing it on to others. But it's great to have that motivation because you're already seeing that this meditation journey isn't just for you, it's something you want to share without kind of preaching and trying to convert people, but it's just making it available. I think that's really good. And then sure, the second thing you mentioned is around how people sometimes associate meditation with religion, spirituality, Buddhism in particular. It doesn't have to be. And that's what this whole modern movement in mindfulness is about, where you're using meditation techniques in a completely non-religious way. And I think the neuroscience aspect is very helpful there. If you explain to people some of the neuroscientific evidence for meditation's efficiency, how it works, that gets people to see it on a different level. It doesn't have to be a religious experience. To me, the boundaries between all of this are very blurred, because if you sit down and meditate, if you're a Buddhist, if you're a mindfulness person, if you're this or that, you're just sitting there with your mind. I don't think there's any such thing as religious meditation. Meditation is beyond religion. It's you and your mind. So these are constructs which I think have to fall away eventually.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Lucas, and
Hi.
My question will be really straightforward, but before I ask it, I want just to tell you that I see many things that you've been talking about that also they relate to me. Like I've been working, I'm 34, and I've been working in big corporations for the last, 12 years. I've been working in sales, closing big deals. earning good money, getting good paychecks. And those moments were always a high for me.
Yeah?
They were always the high for me at the moment when I was really, like excited and great. And even the last year, I closed the biggest deal of Google Cloud here in Dublin. And it was another moment when I felt like, wow, I'm so great. But since I would say 3-4 years, I've been feeling that my mental and my physical health was getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
And I've been having, things like I was fainting, I was getting anxiety attacks, panic attacks. I was going to doctors, I was checking myself, doing MRIs, doing, cardio tests, meeting different doctors, expecting, the worst, and never getting any results that would say that something was really wrong to me. Yes. And I was asking myself, what's the problem? Yes. And some of the doctors were referring to me, maybe it's time for you to kind of focus on your mental state, advising me to go to psychiatrist, psychologist to deal with those situations. Because I realized, and I'm realizing right now, that when I was on high, that was great, but when there was time when I was not closing those huge deals and getting big paychecks, I was feeling already like I was almost like depressed. And maybe it's an extreme case, but I decided to leave Google because I was just no longer able to find my state of balance in the current situation. Like you said, all these thoughts the whole time running through my head and just being motivated by those things.
So
I decided to leave.
Where you're at now is to close a deal with your own mind, isn't it? Is that you're now working on the internal deal. This whole idea of closing deals is a relationship, isn't it? And if you can now use meditation to connect with your mind and have more compassion for yourself and others, that's where you're at now, isn't it? It's exciting, no?
The moment is exciting. I mean, it's a very scary moment, yes, because I've been like an addict, like a drug addict for 12 years. And now I'm trying to leave it, and all these things are coming out from me. But my question actually at the end of this long introduction is, like, where should I start if I would like to find maybe, I don't know if I can call it a solution, but a help in things like meditation, like, becoming more aware of myself, of my thoughts. How can I start this journey?
Start now. The journey starts now. You just need to find a class. There's classes here in Google. You can attend a class here and just learn some techniques and just do it. It's very easy to learn in a way. You just learn the method, but then you start. And really let it be part of your daily life. Meditating every day, but also practicing moments of mindfulness throughout the day. Just start right now. Make that deal.
So you wouldn't say it necessarily must be one particular way of, yoga or meditation classes. Is just, whatever you choose is good, because you say like it's here at Google. So if I choose something, outside will not help me, or
breathing is a good place to start. Mindful breathing. Focusing on the breathing. You can learn that technique, and that's it. It doesn't need much color or drama to it. It's very simple. Just try it. It's exciting. Thank you. Who else?
Hello. So before that you came here, I googled you, of course, to know who you were, and I found an interesting article. I just want to read it. Not the article, just the title. No? It says Buddhist monk returns to life after 4 years in retreat.
Oh yeah.
So I would
past is coming back to haunt me.
I would like to know if you can, can you explain us how was these 4 years in retreat, and what you learned, and the pros, the cons, the difficulty it was, and what you learned in yourself, how it was basically.
So yeah, I was in a 4-year retreat from 2005 to 2009 on an island off the coast of Scotland, and it's a really intensive meditation training. You have no contact with the outside world. You have a letter from your family once a month. So there's no internet, no Google, nothing. And in fact, we had no electricity. We had a generator which came on in the mornings and evenings. And it's a very intensive program of meditation sessions all day. You're not doing anything else. You have tea breaks and food, but you're just doing long, long sessions of meditation. And it's really intense. And really, you learn a lot. You kind of meet your edge. and then you meet your edge, and then you discover later on that there's another edge that you also have to meet. It never stops. And I found it incredibly difficult, but incredibly rewarding at the same time, because it really helped me to become more kind of making friends with myself. I mean, in Buddhism, we don't like the word self, but I mean it in a different way, that you become more comfortable with who you are. You learn to deal with your emotions differently. I experienced a lot of very painful emotions during that time, a lot of sadness and depression. In fact, the first 2 years I was severely depressed. But then the meditation started to change that, in that I started to learn to have compassion for that part of my mind, and then it started to shift and change.
And just jumping in, since you mentioned for 2 years you were depressed, like what kept you going, knowing that, okay, you're gonna get over this depression? Or maybe after 1 year you said, like,
I definitely felt like, should I leave? Should I stop? I can't take this anymore. I suppose what keeps you going is there is some kind of deep commitment, and you know that I really trust the meditation journey and the teachings. There was never a point when I thought this stuff doesn't work or it's not good for me. I knew it's good. I just felt unable. And so that's what kept me going. And then eventually, through the help of my teachers and then my own sort of commitment, I was able to connect with the practice, and then things changed. Yeah.
So overall, Googlers tend to be quite data-driven, and I'm wondering about your opinion about actually measuring happiness. So most of the time it's a scale out of 10, so putting an absolute number to such a subjective thing.
I don't know about measuring happiness, because then you start to kind of grasp after results. We're all data-driven, we're all in measures and evaluations. And can we maybe take meditation and happiness away from that world and have some time when we're just not driven and we can just let go and be? I think that's crucial in a data-driven environment. And that's what I've been talking about a lot here when I'm doing these regular classes at Google, is can we have some time when we just switch off all of that and go into a sense of being? I think that would be great. And then go back to the data, but you're bringing the being with you into the data. Thank you.
I'll just ask one last question.
Oh, okay.
Kind of, since you mentioned data and you mentioned working with a neuroscientist on a book, so just wondering if you, like, from a science perspective, is there one thing you learned about meditation from the neuroscientist that was interesting from, like, a scientific perspective?
Yeah, it's been really interesting working with Ash. He's a neuroscientist. So Ruby Wax, Ash Rampura, and myself did this book together, and it was an amazing conversation about the mind and the heart and the brain, and I learned a lot from Ash about, well, okay, so what meditation does to your brain, the proof that it works, but more interestingly, this whole notion of creating habits and changing them. He gave a really beautiful example where he said, the brain is a bit like a field, and if a field with lots of grass, and there's no path, and one person walks and makes a path, a second person walks and makes a path, a third person, eventually that path, the grass is flattened and there's a path, and you can easily go down it. And he said that's what meditation does. You're creating neural pathways that become more and more natural, and that's how you can be happy. So I learned a lot from Ash, and from Ruby as well.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.